Take the wheel, Peg.
He's my brother.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Retro Build. We're building this 1988 Toyota Supra, and today we're going to be changing out the rear differential fluid as well as the transmission fluid. Coming up.
The sponsor for today's episode is nobody.
When jacking the car up from the rear, it's best to use the rear differential carrier. Now that I have it jacked up, I have the jack stands on the rear pinch welds holding the back of this car up. As long as you have the jack stands set up properly, they should not fail. However, I do always take an extra measure, so I have the floor jack sitting underneath the car as well. In case the jack stand should fail, this is my backup. Now you always want to shake the car just to make sure. That's not going anywhere. For our fluids, we're going to use Mobil 1 Synthetic Gear Lube 75W90 GL5 for the transmission. For the differential, we're going to use Castrol 80W90 GL5 with limited slip. Make sure you also have your drain plug and fill plug gaskets. Since we're going to be removing the drain plug as well as the fill plug, you want to make sure to use new plug gaskets when putting your plug back in. Whenever you're working under the car, just make sure you have your safety glasses on. Now both the fill plug as well as the drain plug for the differential are 24 millimeters. Before we loosen the drain plug, we always want to make sure that the fill plug can be taken off first. Because if you drain all your fluid out and you come to find out that you can't take off the fill plug, you're going to be in a world of trouble. It's not a common size, so you may have to pick one of these up just for this job. I already got the bolt loose, so now I just have my ratchet to take it out all the way. There's the fill plug, and now the drain plug. It shouldn't take that long to drain out because it takes about 1.4 quarts. My only concern right now is that we only have 2 jack stands and the rear of the car is lifted up, so I feel like some fluid is going to be at the front end of the differential and not fully come out. So I may swing around the front, bring the floor jack with me, and just raise up the front end temporarily and then raise it back down. Now that we got all the fluid out, we can go ahead and put the drain plug back in. But first we want to make sure we take off the old drain plug gasket before we put the new one on. After we hand tighten the drain plug, we can go ahead and torque it down. It's 36 foot-pounds for the drain plug and the fill plug. Now that we have the drain plug put back in, we can go ahead and start filling the fluid up. As we're filling up the fluid, we want to make sure we don't overfill it. So you're supposed to use the fill plug as a guide to how much fluid is in there. This exhaust is really rusty. Suspension's good though. Right now we're looking at it from the driver's side, and to the left is the drain plug, and up top is the fill plug. The drain plug is 24 millimeters, just like our differential. The fill plug though is 17 millimeters. And again, we want to do the same thing. We want to make sure we can remove the fill plug before we remove the drain plug and drain all the transmission fluid out. Now, since this is a very tight space, I'm actually not going to fill it from here, from the fill plug. I'm just going to fill it through the shifter hole, which is a easy way to drop it in there. Oh wow, that is super black. So right now I have the transmission fluid draining. I'm gonna bring the jack around to the backside, just lift up the back to even it out when I start to fill the transmission fluid. But first I'm gonna let it finish draining and then close off the drain plug and start filling it. The capacity for the transmission fluid is about 2.5 US quarts. You don't want to overfill the transmission fluid, just like the differential, of course. So I'm gonna put in maybe about 1.5 to 2, and then I'm gonna check it on the fill plug. So again, I'm gonna fill it from the top, but I'm gonna check it on the fill plug underneath. I raised up the rear and actually raised it up a little bit higher and then leveled it off, just to make sure that all the fluid out of the transmission came out. Once it starts doing a slow drip, you can go ahead and close off the drain plug. Make sure you have your new washer on there before putting the drain plug back in. The torque spec for the drain plug is 30 foot-pounds, so it's a little bit less than differential. Now that we have all the old transmission fluid out, we can go ahead and start removing our shifter boot to get access to the transmission from the top. Now, as you can see, I don't have a stereo in here. I took the stereo out to put it in one of my other cars. So I've had this out multiple times. For me, it's pretty easy to take off now, but I'll walk you through some of the steps. First of all, you want to remove your shift knob. Just twist it. Once that comes out, this should slide right up. So there's a screw or a pin that actually holds it in right here. Once you get that out, which I already have this one out, you should be able to pull up on this. And actually you'll want to take this out first, just to get it out of the way. And this just comes right up. You may want to put it in a lower gear, like 4th, to provide more room for this to slide out. Now as you can see, my shift boot has already been torn apart. It's actually been like that since I got it. So I'll have to replace that soon. That might be the next episode, I'm not sure yet. The emergency button, you'll have to reach back and push in on the connector tab and then pull it right out, as well as the headlight washers. This one's facing down. There you go. And back here for the light for the little compartment, there's also a little connector on there. That one pulls right out. And the cigarette lighter, there's going to be 2 connectors on there. There's a couple different ways to remove this, but the easiest way is to just get the connector right here, push in right here, and disconnect it. That takes everything off. There you go. Now you have access to the transmission through this boot here. There's 4 screws, 1 on each corner. And it looks like a 10mm. So if you remove those 4 screws, this here kind of holds the boot down. You'll be able to get into the transmission from there. With this plate that's holding down the boot, it's just stuck on there. I guess it hasn't been removed in a long time, or if ever. So you just kind of have to wedge it up with a flathead screwdriver in here and wedge upwards. Just pop it up just gently. Don't have to be too rough with it. There you go. And it should come up with that bracket. To kind of loosen it a little bit and then slide the whole rubber boot up. Once you get this boot off, there's going to be another boot right below, which will be your access to the transmission. So this very bottom plate that has arrows on it, you're going to want to pull that upwards. Just slide it up. Once you take off the plate with the 4 bolts, there's going to be another rubber piece below that, and then there's going to be one more boot here, and that's going to be the hardest one to take off. I was able to get it off with some flatheads and some pliers, but below that there's going to be 4 bolts. Now that you got that off, the transmission fluid can go down in here. So then go ahead and just put your funnel in there. Make sure you get it into the hole all the way down. Now the Supra W58 transmission takes 2.5 total US quarts. I'm probably gonna put in about 1.5 to 2 quarts and recheck around there and keep putting a little bit as needed. I don't think I'll use the full 2.5 quarts. Even though I drained it pretty well, there's always gonna be fluid still inside the gears somewhere. Now the torque spec for this is, I believe, 30 foot-pounds, but my torque wrench is not going to fit in that space, so it's going to go with hand tight for now. Alright, time to put our shifter console back together. We finally got all the transmission fluid in, the differential's done, of course. Tomorrow I'll do a full test drive with the vehicle to make sure the fluids are all in good condition and everything is pretty smooth. Now I'm gonna clean everything up around here. We're not gonna put the interior fully back together because that's actually next week's episode. We're gonna go ahead and clean up the interior a little bit. So I'm gonna leave a lot of these pieces out so it'll make it easier for me to clean up the interior. So as you can see, the interior just like dust, nasty stained carpets. They could use a real deep cleaning. The shift boots definitely need to be replaced. The one for the actual shifter was torn. The one for the e-brake is faded really bad. The steering wheel is super faded. We're probably not going to work on that next episode, but we're going to at least try to clean up the interior and at least make it look a lot cleaner than what it was.